We all have that list of ancient masterpieces we feel obligated to read. You're told that to truly understand human literature, you need to conquer texts like the Mahabharata, the Tale of Genji, or the Epic of Gilgamesh. But when you actually sit down to read them, the reality is jarring. You aren't handed a neatly packaged paperback. You're dealing with archaic formatting, missing chapters, and in many cases, literal shattered fragments of clay that survive from thousands of years ago. If you approach these ancient texts expecting the pacing and structure of a modern thriller, you are going to hit a wall of frustration and abandon the book by chapter 3. So we aren't going to rank these epics by how great they are. Instead, we are going to evaluate them using a framework of reading ROI, or return on investment. Reading ROI is the ratio of the cognitive effort required to get through the text versus the actual narrative, cultural, and philosophical payoff you receive at the end. Conquering world literature doesn't mean forcing your way through the thickest book on the shelf. It means finding the exact text that matches your current cognitive stamina. This chart maps it out. The x-axis represents time and cognitive effort, from weekend reads to multi-year commitments. The y-axis measures narrative and cultural payoff, from esoteric to universal themes. Here, we plot every major epic by its specific friction points and rewards. By measuring your personal time limits against what the text expects from you, you can guarantee a successful reading experience and avoid adding another "did not finish" to your list. Let's start with the high-efficiency category. These are texts that require minimal time investment, but deliver massive foundational world-building. This is where the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Prose Edda sit. The standard Babylonian version of Gilgamesh is remarkably short. You can read it in an afternoon, yet it immediately plunges you into heavy themes regarding heroism, friendship, and the intense human fear of death. This excerpt shows the direct, poetic structure of the Akkadian translation. The formatting relies on short, punchy stanzas that rapidly move the reader through complex existential conflicts without getting bogged down in dense paragraphs. Across 12 tablets, the text efficiently evolves Gilgamesh's core identity, first showing him struggling as a man, then as a king, and finally challenging the gods. The Prose Edda functions similarly for Norse mythology. Written in Iceland in the 13th century, it was literally designed as a textbook to teach younger poets how to understand the old myths and the alliterative verse used to tell them. The core trade-off for this quadrant is depth of character. Because these texts are brief or compiled as reference manuals, you sacrifice deep psychological exploration in favor of rapid-fire plot. If you want to absorb the origins of ancient humanity but only have a few hours to spare, these are your optimal high ROI weekend reads. Next, we look at texts that offer straightforward, linear action and clear archetypal heroes. These are ideal if you want pure narrative momentum. The Indian epic, the Ramayana, fits perfectly here. It features a highly active plot centered on Prince Rama's 14-year exile into the forest and the subsequent massive war he fights to rescue his wife Sita. This page shows the exact moment the demon king Ravana abducts Sita. The prose states that at this outrage, the whole universe of animate and inanimate beings trembled, and a profound darkness covered all. It reads with the visceral pacing of a modern fantasy epic. The Japanese Kojiki is similarly accessible. It outlines a clear, sequential creation myth where the deities Izanagi and Izanami stand on the floating bridge of heaven and stir the ocean to form the islands of Japan. The specific trade-off for modern readers here is the moral framework. These epics prioritize idealized virtue, strict duty, and ritual purity, which means you won't find the shades of moral ambiguity modern audiences are used to. These epics provide the best ROI for readers seeking clear-cut heroes and villains while absorbing the cultural bedrock of India and Japan. Now we move to the most demanding texts on the matrix. These are the epics requiring immense cognitive stamina and months of dedicated reading. The Mahabharata is the prime example. It has a staggering physical scale, consisting of roughly 100,000 shlokas, or verses, divided into massive, intricate chapters called parvas. The main structural hurdle here is the use of nested narratives. This is the ancient technique where characters within the main story stop to tell another story, which itself contains yet another story. You see this taken to the extreme in the 11th century Katha Sarit Sagara, literally translated as the ocean of the streams of stories. In these labyrinths, it is incredibly easy to lose track of the main plot entirely, but the payoff is massive. If you stick with it, you achieve an unparalleled immersion into complex Vedic philosophy, exploring concepts of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha that encompass every human conflict imaginable. These texts require the stamina of an endurance athlete, but they reward you by providing an entire self-contained universe rather than a single simple story. Our final category covers texts that completely abandon modern linear action in favor of deep psychological or spiritual decoding. Consider the tale of Genji. Its primary cognitive hurdle is that the characters are almost never explicitly named. Instead, the narrator refers to them by their shifting court ranks or by the colors of their clothing. The second hurdle of Genji is the dialogue itself. Characters communicate through classic Tanka poetry, using verses to execute thinly veiled political maneuvering and express complex emotions. The Gnostic Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas or Judas, present an equally frustrating structural challenge. They are completely devoid of plot, presenting only non-narrative lists of disjointed secret sayings. The conceptual hurdle here is understanding the framework of gnosis, the belief that discovering and interpreting specialized secret knowledge is itself the passport to salvation. The trade-off is steep. You get zero traditional plot momentum, requiring you to patiently rely on academic footnotes to understand what you are reading. The ROI here is strictly for readers who want to decode profound human psychology or secret religious histories, and who are willing to accept pure ambiguity over action. We can take this theory and build a practical decision flowchart based on your free time and preferences. If you want psychological romance and have patience, choose Genji. If you want a life-changing reading marathon, choose the Mahabharata. Your frustration with an ancient masterpiece is rarely because the writing is flawed. It happens because your available time and expectations are misaligned with how the text was actually designed to be read. For the time-poor modern reader looking for the absolute highest return on investment, the definitive recommendation is the Epic of Gilgamesh. Achieving true cultural literacy doesn't require reading every foundational text ever written. It simply requires strategically choosing the one text that perfectly matches your current stage of life.